everybody, it's Jen again. I figured I should make a follow-up video to go with my last video that I just made, which I did a little bit of touching on to the topics of being 12 years old and having some experiences, so I figured it would be a good idea to go ahead and make a video to tell you guys about those experiences more specifically. So, after seeing the movie Craft, my friends and I, we were at the movie theater, and we felt different and powerful and activated is a good way of explaining it. When you're 12 years old, you don't really know what you're feeling and what you're experiencing, but I now as an adult can describe it in that way. I felt connected to the elements, and I felt like I remembered things from my past without actually remembering the details. Like I remembered that connection and those abilities to do things that I didn't know that I could do, that I had power that I didn't know that I actually had. If you are into all of this, you will know what I mean by that, but I didn't know what it meant then, if that makes sense. So first thing we did, we went back to my friend's house and we all sat around a candle and we tried to, have a seance, and we didn't actually summon any spirits. Like we didn't say, hey, whoever's dead, well, will you come be here with us? But we focused our energy on connecting to whatever was available to us. And we didn't know anything about protecting ourselves or grounding ourselves. So what we really actually did, I think, was just raise the energy in the room, because we ended up making the candle explode. And so the jar that the candle was in busted and freaked out a bunch of teenagers. And therefore, that was the beginning day and moment, I think, that where I really got into the metaphysical and the occult world. But I was also making mistakes because I did not know things, and I was having pretty scary experiences that I'm going to share with you all. So you can use this information to, 1, protect yourself, 2, be educated so that you are not afraid, because fear comes from a lack of understanding and a lack of knowledge. So hopefully this video will give you a little bit more information so that you can be a little bit more comfortable with these aspects and have better luck than I did. So after that, I felt like, all right, we've got some power, we were obviously connected and we can do these things. And so now we have to see where we're going from here. So we got a Ouija board, and again, didn't know anything about protections or, how to ground ourselves or the proper way to communicate or anything like that. So we had a lot of communication on the Ouija board, and there's really no way of proving, anything that we talked about on there, or even remembering most of the details of the things that we talked about. But on one particular day that I remember specifically, I was sick. I was already had a cold or something like that, and I was at my friend's house, which was already haunted, the same house that we exploded the candle in. And I started to play with the Ouija board by myself. And now, as an adult, one of the things that I would recommend for you if you're playing with a Ouija board is do not play with it by yourself, and do not play with it while you're sick. So I made both of those, rookie mistakes. And what happened was I started to have a numbing sensation that went up my arms from my fingertips, which were on the board, and it continuously went up the arms all the way into my chest. And the being that I was communicating with was a child that was telling me how they had gotten killed by a lion at the zoo or something. It was like a cage, I guess, where the lion had access to the little boy when he put his, arms and stuff into the cage. And so this must have been a really long time ago. That's pretty much the details of that I remember. But he warned me in that moment not to do this again. He warned me that you shouldn't, he's the one that told me these things, that you shouldn't do it by yourself, that you shouldn't do it while you're sick, and that there was, he called them evil because I was a 12-year-old, but he said there was evil entities that were able to take advantage of you when you're in those vulnerable states. So that little boy or spirit or whatever it was that came through and communicated to me that day scared the crap out of me, but also taught me a lot and protected me. So that was experience number 2. So now I watched an episode of like a Rolanda show or something like that, and on the Rolanda show they were talking about experiences which we now refer to as astral catalepsy and out-of-body experiences, but at this time they were referring to it as a witch riding your back. So these people were talking about how it felt like they were being held down when they were at sleep at night, how they couldn't open their eyes, but they felt like they were awake, and something was weighing them down, and they referred to this experience as a witch riding their back. Well, I said that the same night, I said, in my prayers, that I wanted to be able to see ghosts and communicate with spirits. And officially that night, that exact night, was the first time I experienced astral catalepsy. And it scared the crap out of me. So I had that exact experience where I'm listening to my radio because I listen to 92Q Love Jams, and I could hear the exact song playing, so it wasn't a dream. There was no transition to, out of that song. The timeline was going along with what was happening in reality. And I'm being held down. It felt like I couldn't open my eyes. When I did, they were like flutter, and I could barely see out of them, and it looked like there was an entity over top of me, or like a dark figure, and I started to feel like maybe I was messing with, the wrong energies. Maybe I'd opened myself up to something negative. I started to have nightmares where based on my belief system, I was at like the throne of the devil, and having what I thought were possibly demonic experiences, but this was actually just a lack of knowledge on my behalf, and a lack of protection, a lack of grounding. These are all things that I didn't really understand, and that's just the fear that I embedded into my own mind based on the knowledge that I had already been presented with, and the facts that other people, not facts, but opinions that other people had already told me that also didn't have any knowledge about these aspects. So I started going to the library and reading the metaphysical encyclopedias, and it was out of control. Like, my knowledge and my thirst just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and I just could not stop. I could not let go of all of these occult and mysticism things, and I didn't really have anyone in my family to talk to about it, and I didn't have anyone to guide me. I really only had my friends at the time, who were much older than me, and I was sort of the one who was guiding them because of being in tuned, so and having the passion. So I remember one night we were doing light as a feather, stiff as a board in a new house, and I felt myself get shot through the stomach, and literally the pain of the shot went through me, and it was my first time actually having a psychic imprint of an experience. One of my friends who was in the center, who was the board that we were practicing on, she knew someone that had gotten shot in the stomach, and I was having that physical psychic connection with that person, and it came through in that experience. So light as a feather, stiff as a board is not just a stupid game that kids play. If you are psychic and you're sensitive and you have abilities, experiences can come through in various ways. I remember my friends used to ask me to come over and see if their houses were haunted, and I would just trust my intuition on what I was being told and how I was, reading these situations. And I intuitively was told that my pinky finger would stand for a young person, and my thumb finger would stand for an older person. And when I would go through their house, I would feel numbness in these various fingers, and then I would be given intuitive information, not specific details, but at this point, if my pinky was going numb, a child had died in that house. Like, that was the way that I was going about it. And maybe it was accurate and maybe it wasn't, but these were the these were the intuitions that I was being guided by, and this was the information that I was sharing with them. And this is just a process that I'm trying to take you along so you can see how it built up for me and how I experienced it, so that you can understand for yourself that it's okay for you to go with what you're guided, by, and have your experiences just like mine. They are no better or worse. So one night when I was in my house, I started to try to get more of a grasp on the astrocatalepsy, and this time I saw the beings. I started to see the black shadowy figures in the corner of the room, and they were watching over me, and it seemed like almost every night they would be there. And I tried to start communicating with them, and I never heard anything back. But if I would put my arm up, my arm would start to go, tingly and get cold and numb. So I realized they were trying to communicate with me. So one night I was 4 doors down at my friend's house, and I noticed that the shadowy figure was in the corner of the room in her house even. So now I knew that this person was following me. So instead of feeling fearful, like it was, something bad, I've started to realize that it's watching over me. So this being is watching over me, and I should try to communicate with it with my friend, so that, I have witness and I have proof that this is actually happening in a way. So I told her to put her arm up as well. We both put our arms up, and we both experienced the same coldness and numbness, and we started to use that in a form of yes or no questions to communicate with the being. So these are some of my first ways of developing a way to communicate with these beings and spirits from other realms. So the experiences that I had, they only grew more intuitive and greater from that point on. So the next thing I can remember is when I spent the night at another friend's house, and we were up late at night, and I started to see the image inside of my mind, like it was already a part of my memory. How when you remember something, you don't actually see the physical image, but the whole entire image is created in your mind, and you can explain the entire details of it. That's how it started to become for me. So now I can see her guide. He's wearing a trench coat, and he comes into her room every night, and he watches over her. And I just started to describe that to her that night and tell her, what he looked like and how he was always there. And she assured me that she did feel protected and she did feel watched. And then I started to get other images of when her baby would be in the next room over, all of these faces over top of it in the crib and making it cry. So then I asked her, does your baby cry when he's in there? Does he not like to be in there? And she said that he didn't like to be in there. So the more that I opened up about what I was experiencing, the more affirmations I was able to receive to let me know whether or not these experiences and information were real or not, and to be able to trust myself even more. So I developed those things throughout the years by trusting myself and just putting myself out there and going with the intuition and the feelings and the messages that I received. So I always felt kind of crazy, and like it might not make sense to other people, but I wasn't afraid. I still went with it. I still shared it, and I want you to do the same thing. If you're having experiences, I want you to embrace those experiences, and I want you to develop your intuition, because you're going to benefit from it, I promise you. So around 15 years old, I moved away from my family, and I went to live with a cousin, and I went from being in a city loud world to a quiet, not country, but to me it was considered country, like trees all around me. So now I was annoyed at first by the silence. Like the silence became so loud to me. Like it was louder than living in the city where I came from, because it was kind of like telling me that now is the time where I'm going to focus and be able to be communicating with more things and going to be bothered by more stuff. And I didn't know if I was actually ready for that, as a 15-year-old, and for what I was going through in my life. So one night in the middle of the night, I woke up, and the entire room, I slept in the living room on the floor, and the entire room was red lit, like if somebody had lit a red light bulb in there, but there was no red light bulb. And all around me, from one end of the room to the other end of the room, were these little white orbs in formation of like braille letters. That's the best way I could describe it. So like various formations of white orbs in a red lit room. And then I was experiencing astral catalepsy because I could not get up or anything, but I could open my eyes this time and I could see pretty clearly. There was a rib cage, transparent rib cage, going this way, side, like in a horseshoe around me. It's not a bed, but around my bed that I had made on the floor, and it just kept going like that, going around the horseshoe back and forth. And I got pretty scared and freaked out because I couldn't make any sense of it. And then it went to a bust of a Greek statue who I don't know still to this day who it is. I have theories that it could be Plato, but I don't know. Or Socrates, I don't know. They had a beard, and it was just the bust of it, and it was also transparent, and it was coming down from the ceiling and closer and closer and closer to me until it disappeared right before it would have touched me. So that was that first uber crazy psycho nut. Am I losing my mind? Should I even tell anybody about this experience? And then I had more of those kinds of experiences throughout the next few years. Like one night I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a giant mechanical spider, like Wild Wild West kind of with Will Smith, if I don't know, something like crazy like that, while I was awake, coming down from like this cathedral ceiling in this apartment that I was living in. And it was like, literally so realistic that I actually woke the entire household up. Like, I was living with my girlfriend's father at the time, and I woke up all her brothers, her father. He thought I was crazy. Everyone thought I was crazy. I was telling everybody how this giant mechanical spider was coming down from the ceiling, and I was totally wide awake. It was not a dream, and I was very serious. So those things still to this day don't make much sense to me, but I just want to let you know how we go through some crazy things as psychics and mediums, and we get a lot of messages, and we don't always understand what we're seeing or hearing, but we still need to share it with somebody, and we still need to have faith in ourselves, and we need to be able to pick back up, even if we have mistakes or messages that don't make any sense. We still need to keep going with it. So I didn't allow those experiences to stop me or to keep me scared of moving forward, and I just kept on developing and developing and developing, and to the point where I can just close my eyes and go right into REM or theta state, whatever you want to call it, and communicate with beings anytime I want to. And I consider myself, for the most part, unless I'm having a bad day or somebody really pisses me off, to be a very high vibrational being, and therefore I stay protected, and I stay in a state where I'm going to be communicating with high vibrational beings as well. And I never get any information that is frightening or harmful. I never had any beings tell me to hurt myself or anyone else, and I only receive positive, life-affirming, good messages for the most part. I mean, I've had messages where they've told me a person is on drugs or talks about, losing a child or something like that, and that could be considered dark to some people, but for me, I think that it is for the healing of the person. So the only type of things that ever come through are in your highest and best interest, because that is how I am and how my energy is. So you have to remember, when you're dealing with occult, mysticism, witchcraft, readings, psychic readings, channelings, anything, you have to remember that you are going to attract the energy that you are putting out. So if you're going into any of this with a hateful, mean spirit and you want to hurt people, you are going to hurt yourself. If you're going into this with the attitude that you want to help people, you're going to help yourself. So I could go on and on and on and on, but I can't believe this video actually made it almost 20 minutes. So we're just going to take that as a victory, and now that you guys know how officially crazy I am, I hope you still love me either way, because I still love you.